Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. Let's get the dice going. Be sure and hit the like button when you come into the live stream. By hitting the like button, the YouTube algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. And it's always more fun to have these live stream videos when we have more people joining in on the comment section to discuss some of the things that we're talking about. And in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the lumber prices, because today the July contract should close, and will close, and it should close well below what anybody was ever anticipating the price level was going to be. Now, I personally thought like 450 probably would have been somewhere around what the lumber prices would have closed at for July. But here we are, I think before I started the video, at like 418 per thousand. This is incredibly low. Now, from all the things that I've heard personally, and those of you who know that I do work at a lumber yard, retail sales for a living. I live in the Pacific Northwest, where we produce just about as much lumber as anybody else does. In fact, Oregon, I believe is still the #1 lumber producing state in the nation. So when it comes to the lumber industry, I really have a good sight, right? I can see a lot of things that are taking place out there, and I've been calling this out for quite some time, saying, hey, there is going to be issues taking place within the lumber industry, especially if we see these prices continue to fall. We are going to see more mill curtailments, more mill shutdowns, more tightening of inventory, and this is exactly what we are seeing today. Now, it's very difficult to wrap your mind around this, because most of the time when we see low prices, we kind of think of high inventory, right? Like if you have more product, then you have to lower the prices in order to sell it. And that's really kind of what was happening, except that it was more from the demand side of things that has just plummeted, as opposed to the supply chain and what it provides on a regular basis. So as supply is trying to continuously be there for the demand, and the demand is falling, well, pretty soon you have an oversupply taking place. Mill curtailments, shutdowns, inventory depletion begins to take place. Well, that was something that we were reporting on months and months ago. In fact, I was saying it, hey, keep an eye out. There is issues taking place within the lumber industry. I am finding gaps in production, like you would find where some wider lengths or maybe some longer lengths were not necessarily readily available within the market, that you would have to wait a little bit of time to find that these particular units of lumber, which would be readily available, ended up being somewhat in a short supply. Well, now as time goes on, we're starting to find that to be the case in more and more stuff. Some of the more common items that you would typically find, like 2x6 10s, 2x6 8s, 2x4 10s, 2x4 8s. These are some of the most common units of lumber that would be in the market itself, and they're starting to come up in short supply, where we can't find them necessarily on a regular basis. Now, again, if you take it back just a little ways, you can go and find reports on mill curtailment, mill shutdowns, like indefinite shutdowns. This was being reported across the nation, from British Columbia, all across Canada, all across the United States. There was all this talk taking place, and we were reporting on it here on this channel, right? But it wasn't making headlines, so nobody really notices this stuff. So, but if you just watch it, if you just pay attention to it, if you look for it, well, then the evidence is there, right? And we were reporting on it here on this channel about how these mills are going to cut back on inventory. They are going to shorten up the supply of lumber out there. This is exactly what we were experiencing. Now, as the demand continues to fall, the prices are going to go with it. And now the demand is falling. Why? Because the builders aren't there. Why aren't the builders there? Because the buyer isn't there. If the buyer was there, the builder would be excited. The builder's not excited because the buyer's not there. This is what it comes down to. So when it comes to the demand for lumber, yeah, sure, there's a lot of retail demand that exists out there when it comes to like building new shelves in the garage, putting that woodshed together, the chicken coop, maybe remodeling some. You know, these aren't necessarily coming from like builder demand or contractor demand. This is just individual person's retail demand that is driving the lumber prices when those projects are taking place. However, if you have a situation in which that you are very concerned about the future, worried about your job, worried about inflation running persistent, or just having an economic slowdown from recession, what are the chances that you're going to want to go and do those extra projects, those ones that are capable of being postponed? Like, would you look at those projects and say, yeah, I'm going to do them right now going into worry? Or would you do it, or would you hold back saying, no, I'd rather hold on to that money and wait for this time of concern to pass before I jump into those projects? That is elastic demand. That means you can or cannot, you may or may not want to participate into it, right? The builder is inelastic demand. Once they start, it's on, right? And they don't stop. Like once you start the project, you have to go forward with it. The moment that you slow down or stop, the deterioration to the project begins, and that costs money, right? So time is money, and once you get the project started, you have to go forward, right? This is how builders operate. Well, what happens when you go forward and there's no inventory out there, right? Prices are going to jump. And that's what we had experienced back in the day when we saw it run up to 1700, is that all of a sudden there was all this demand starting to be created when everybody left the city, moving out to the less populated areas, and the demand for housing had exploded during that time. There was a lot of demand for lumber when we had shortages within the system. Again, this was something that we had reported on prior to COVID. We were reporting on all the inventory depletions, mill curtailments, mill shutdowns, all prior going into COVID. So let's just step back for just a minute. All right, let's just take a look at what really is happening here and just kind of turn off the noise. Don't worry about the excuses or anything. What do we have back in the day? 2019, mill inventory depletions, curtailments, shutdowns, right? What happened when there was all of a sudden a spark to demand, right? Prices shot up. Where did the spark come from? All of a sudden people leaving the cities moving out to the urban areas or out to the less populated areas. So if we look at the situation today, we have the mill curtailments, shutdowns, depletions, very similar, not for the same reasons, but it's still taking place, right? So if you look back, forget about the reasons, just look at what's happening. Mill curtailments, inventory shutdowns, or inventory depletions and shutdowns. What could spark the demand, right? Well, what do we have running rampant through the mainstream media right now? Again, not if, but most definitely, when will interest rates get cut? All right. Everybody is now looking at the forward guidance or the signaling or the job owning or the whatever that's coming out of the Federal Reserve, talking about how there's going to be interest rate cuts this year. And again, it's not a matter of if, but when, right? So now I laugh when I hear this stuff, right? I'm not trying to say that there won't be interest rate cuts coming into the future. I'm not trying to say that at all. What I am trying to say is that all this media, this propaganda push about the interest rate cuts starts to impact the economy as if those rate cuts had happened. The more they promise it, the more that they articulate it out there, the more they are transparent about their actions and all this other stuff that goes out there, the more that's going to stimulate the economy. So now good Lord, if this is to take place, right, this idea of an interest rate cut going into the future, this is the stimulating action in which that people are looking for in order to take out a loan for a house, because they'll be able to refinance into the future, the hope of it. Doesn't mean they're going to, doesn't mean they're going to be able to, doesn't even mean that we're in a good economic environment in order to participate in the idea that you would want to buy a house and participate in that kind of thing, considering that we may be running into an economic slowdown. But that doesn't matter to most people. The only thing that matters is the interest rates in which way that they are going. See, most people don't realize that when interest rates are falling, that's a bad thing happening. Most people don't get that. They don't realize that when the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates, it's because the economy is going into bad times. But yet everybody looks at it as just like this, thank God the Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates. What a great deal, all right? And then they don't realize why it is that the Federal Reserve is actually lowering interest rates in their attempt to try and stimulate the economy, or at least keep the economy from deteriorating any further. But everybody looks for that, like they want it, and it's just like the strangest thing to see out there. So what can we expect from the future? Well, with the tight inventory levels that we are experiencing within the lumber industry, you know, at $418 per thousand, these mills are shutting down. They are only going to produce what is going to sell, and that's it, at the very bare minimum, because most of them are not producing cash or profitable under $500 per thousand. Like a lot of times people will even bring up to me like this argument saying, well, they were profitable at 500 per thousand before. Well, yeah, there's a lot more input costs, energy costs, transportation costs, labor costs, all this other costs has gone into producing lumber. And even back in the day at 400 per thousand, it wasn't exactly like that was profitable to the mills. So at 500 per thousand per day, or 500 per thousand today, is not nearly what it was 500 per thousand a few years ago. And considering that it's an added rail cost going to Chicago, it should be even less than that. These mills are not profiting very much, if at all. Most of them are probably losing at 418 per thousand. So again, how long does it take at that lower price before the demand starts to pick up? Well, I don't see the demand picking up unless those interest rates actually move. The idea of it, right, will work for stimulating the economy, but will it actually spark the investment into building new homes? I don't think so. I think that would actually take real interest rate adjustments. I think it would take over time, and I think it would take somebody actually believing that they would be able to lower their rates going into the future by seeing the evidence of it taking place. Until then, they are probably going to be very cautionary about the whole thing. And I would like, I mean, that's totally understandable too. Like, would you just run out there and just buy a house off the idea that you would be lowering interest rates because of the propaganda news that you are reading right now? Maybe some people. I guess if it's clearly presented out there well enough, people might be, willing to go out there and buy a house thinking that they would be able to lower the rates going into the future based off the information that they were receiving today. But for the most part, most people are probably going to see the actual evidence of it taking place. And that won't happen for a while. Like, even if the Federal Reserve was to cut interest rates today, it would still take 6 months before it would really start to impact the economy. And if you were to think about it from a building point of view, right? Like, if you were going to build a house, your decision to build a house today probably takes, who knows? Like, I mean, I guess it depends on how much cash and how tight your network is. But if you are trying to line up loans, trying to line up contractors, trying to find, permitting, trying to find, all the stuff that goes into it. I mean, there is so much logistics that go into trying to just get a house to the point where you can build a foundation on it, on the land. There is so much involved with that. So if you decide today that you want to build a house and you don't even own the land or anything yet, you know how long it would take before that house comes into fruition? Other people might be sitting there waiting. No, I got the land, I got everything lined up. I'm just waiting for that opportunity to go, right? Sure, there might be plenty of people out there like that who are sitting in that position. But even if those were the people who are waiting, still, how long does it take from the time that they decide to build the house to the time that it can actually be occupied? I mean, depending on the style of house or what it is you're building, but I mean, for the most part, you're probably talking anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, maybe even a year. All right, let's go check it out here. Brody says, hit the like button on your way into the stream, please, everybody, because it will make YouTube share it more so we can get more interesting questions in here. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brody, for being here. Cheap lumber equals cheap housing market too. Expensive lumber equals expensive housing market. I don't believe that. I don't believe that necessarily to be the case. We've had expensive housing for quite some time, and I've seen lumber drop dramatically. Like, most people don't realize how cheap and how devastated the lumber market was in 2019. Like, nobody goes back and looks at those times and thinks about, like, how these mills were shutting down. They were devastated. There was like, it was a bad state, right? And it wasn't like housing market. I mean, we all anticipated a housing market crash, but lumber prices completely crashed. Housing market did not, right? And it might have been well on its way, and I feel that it was if it wasn't for COVID, but the evidence said different, right? I mean, there's no way you can, like, say, I think it was going to be there, but you can't prove it, Cheap lumber maybe in 2016. Yo, Yui, what is buddy? Hey, what's happening, Rich? All right, good afternoon from Kevin from Lakeland, Florida. All right, hi everyone. All right, 418 for July. Yeah, and it's going to close here in a little bit. Hello, everyone. I didn't think it was going to go down to 418. Like, I could imagine, like, I thought, between 450, like maybe just under 450, 430, But here we are at 418. It's just like, oh my gosh, man. Like, it's hard to even, like, it's even hard to contemplate. It's just like, Jesus, I can't imagine what these mills must be thinking right now. 6 months to see prices fall out at lows. Yeah, it's probably gonna take even longer than what we would expect it to, because if without the demand there to roll over the old inventory into new inventory, how do you get the old expensive lumber out of the market and then get the cheaper new lumber into the market? It's very difficult if you don't have a lot of demand happening. Because there's no demand, you see the prices fall, and this is really what we were to expect. Like, most people are like, oh, the lumber yards are ripping everybody off. Look, they're not lowering their price. Yeah, it's because all the lumber that they purchase is all expensive. They have to sell all that lumber in order to get in new, cheaper lumber. It just doesn't happen overnight. And for the most part, when you see situations like this taking place, it's because nobody's buying lumber, right? And so therefore, there's no turning over of inventory, and there's the problem. All right, come on, guys and girls. Let's see you. VP pick. Don't be shy. Lumber going to 200. I don't think so, James. I don't think so, because, like, I just don't see how it could drop to 200 per thousand. Like, in the September's contract, I think it's up at like 470, 480 or something. So again, like, July contract, when it closes today, then the September contract kicks in. Really, we should be looking at the September contract right now for what the new spot price is going to be, and that's up around 470, 480 or something like that. But the fact that this contract's going to close as low as it is, it's like, isn't that telling? I mean, think about that for just a second. We have lumber at the cheapest prices we've seen in such a long time, right? And it's the middle of summer, July. Here we should be pumping out as much lumber as in any month of the season, right? Is this month right here. And there's hardly anything happening. Like, it is so quiet. And it's not just my yard, right? I mean, I talk to the other vendors out there. They're like, no, it's the same thing going on everywhere, right? I mean, sure, we might have, a uniqueness to us that, maybe says there's not a lot of, like, development, like subdevelopments and stuff like that happening, which would drive a little bit more demand to my yard. But it doesn't matter. We're in a secluded area out here. The other yards are experiencing the same things. When I talk to the vendors out there, they're talking about something very similar, regardless of my area, but then the whole area, the whole region. So it's not just here. This is taking place. This is like, I mean, you might have a particular city out there that's booming and doing well, and somebody would be like, oh, dude, man, you should come down to my area. There's nothing but all kinds of construction going on. You're just in the wrong area. Okay, I've heard this one. I know, I get it, right? Those projects that have started, those things are in existence right now. I'm talking about new projects starting right now, right? People taking out building permits, people like doing housing starts, stuff like that, putting the foundations down. These are the things that are slowing dramatically across the nation. And you can just see evidence of it just through the lumber market, right? It's the lumber market is a great indicator of how the rest of the economy is going to go. See, like, think about some of the shortages that we are going to experience going into the future. Already, we're starting to see shortages taking place in shipping capacity, right? So here you got freight liners out there who are, like, basically don't have any rooms on their freight, on their ships to transport the shipping units, right? Those shipping containers. So now we're seeing the price of shipping these things from, like, Shanghai to New York go from 5,000 up to 10,000. And this is going to be inflationary pressure going into the economy. Now, something I think is very concerning about this whole thing is that, how is this really taking place? Like, you think these ships have stuff on it. This stuff is going to eventually land. When it lands, it has to be transported by a truck to a location that needs to be sold. How many people are actually into buying anything right now? Like, all this stuff that we are seeing not only leaving China, but sitting on the ships and making its way across the globe, how much of that is reflection of current demand for it and how much of it is left over from the pandemic and the bullwhip effect that comes from it. Oversupply to undersupply to oversupply to undersupply again. Right? See, this is the situation that we're facing. Most people just don't even understand it. They look at it and say, like, this doesn't make any sense. It's because that doesn't make sense unless you take in the economic theories that are driving it. Right? We're finding that here, like, if you follow lumber, lumber was a great indicator of how the rest of the economy is going to go. It went from oversupply, undersupply, oversupply, undersupply, and the prices were following it. I mean, we went from 400 per thousand up to 1700 per thousand, down to like, 300 and high 300 per thousands, up to like 1200 per thousand, back down here at 400 per thousand. These are like extreme moves, but it's been going over the course of how many years now? I mean, we're talking since 2019. I mean, we're talking even 2018, really. So, I mean, we're talking 5-6 years of this bullwhip effect going into lumber, of oversupply, undersupply. And you have to think, lumber is quick, right? All the rest of the stuff within the economy takes forever, like cars and building, whatever stuff from all over the world and trying to get it to its location. Lumber is fairly quick, right? It's a domestic supply. It's here in the United States. It's got a well-established trucking, rails, distribution hubs, retail outlets. Like, lumber, you can snap that thing right back up into production again without any problems. And you can see how long it's taking to find equilibrium. Well, can you imagine this is going to be ripping through the economy for how long? Like this bullwhip effect? It's going to continue on for years. For years and years to come. People think that it's going to be almost over in a matter. No, I mean, you're talking decade, longer, maybe even more, of trying to figure out where the equilibrium should be inside of this stuff. The redistribution of manufacturing to the cheaper locations in the world. Reestablishment of partnerships and distribution hubs, or distribution networks. It's all taking place right now in front of us, and it's very difficult to understand what is happening because we have all this stuff that just makes it so confusing, right? Much like all those freighters stuck out there. At the same time, we have trucking companies here in the United States that are going out of business. Who's going to move the stuff? That's, again, like, it was the oversupply of truckers that was left over from the pandemic when there was a shortage of them. All right. So all these people started up their trucking business, got trained to be a truck driver, invested in trucks and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, bam, there's this overcapacity of trucking. What happens? Right? Truckers go out of business. Then all this stuff is going to come in and they're going to be like, hey, move this stuff. And they'll be like, hey, we were here a couple of years ago when we all invested. It was malinvestment trying to take advantage of the high price in trucking, only to find out there was too much truckers out there and we all lost our jobs. And you can see that taking place right now. Once this stuff gets here, everybody's going to be like, well, where are all the truckers at? And I'll be like, oversupply, undersupply. Yeah, it's just like it happens in trucking. It'll happen in freight. It'll happen in lumber. It'll happen in cars. Happens in pork and chicken. It'll happen in wheat. It's just like, but none of it happens at the exact same time. All right, moving on. All right, what's the best lumber stock? I don't know. Like, this is another thing. People ask me all the time, like, they want me to give them information on what it is that they can do with their money to try and take advantage of the lumber move. I don't do that here. That's not what I do on this channel. I'm not an investment channel. I'm not trying to be an investment channel. I'm not trying to be financial advising or none of that stuff. I'm trying to talk about macroeconomics. I try to talk about monetary policy, and I try to talk about it in a way that you can internalize the information for yourself so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. Now, there are a lot of mill operations out there, that are within the lumber industry. You got just type it up, major lumber mills or something like that, and you can find all kinds of stocks and places that you can go to try and, make money off of the move if you see it. Now, granted, it's going to be very difficult to try and know when it is that you need to time it for this market. Like, I personally have never done it. Like, all this information that I know about lumber, everything that I see personally from, from the people that I know, like the vendors and mill operators and stuff like that, all the stuff that I've ever learned, I've never tried to make money off of the lumber move. right? That was not something that I was trying to do. I made plenty of money doing videos on it on YouTube. Other people have contacted me and saying, hey, dude, I've made money off of the information that you have presented in your YouTube videos. Thank you, right? That's awesome. You know, if you can make money at it, go for it. If you find that the information is useful in that sense, okay, great, man. That's not what I'm intending for any of it, right? That's not what it is for. It's so that you can have a better understanding of what it is that's taking place out there, so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. Because I don't know what it is you need. No, you don't know what I need. If I buy stock in a lumber mill or something like that, and you go and follow that, how do you know when to sell? Unless you're following me every single moment of every day. I could have been like, no, I got out 2 weeks later. Why didn't you get out? Now you lost or something. I don't give information like that. Like, I just don't do it. So, you know, there's other people out there who like to do that kind of thing. And, you know, I mean, I don't even think I'm qualified to do stuff like that. Not that I'm qualified to say anything, but, you know, in my opinion, the information that I present from the view that I have, I think is like, you know, top notch. What is, oh, we already read that one. All right. Does anyone here think Trump should be fair and choose Biden as his vice president, since Biden just made Trump his replacement for, yeah, no. All right, here we go. Wow, a can of Coke is $1.25 today. I wouldn't known because I quit soda many years ago. Soda stream still goated. Okay. Wayne, yes, but the television has not yet told the others. Bitcoin and gold keeping up with inflation. Warehouser pays 2.75% dividend yield. Al Gore invented the internet. All right, appreciate you, boss man. Yeah, Simon, you have a PhD in fetology. Well, it's kind of funny, like, you know, I've been listening, and somebody gave me a hard time about it the other day, but, you know, it's not, this is the way I kind of see about it. I don't look at the Federal Reserve as a good or bad thing. I don't look at the economy as a good or bad thing. I don't look at anything as good or bad, because everything is about the meaning that I have chosen to give it, right? So if I give it this bad meaning, then yeah, that's exactly what it is. But if I give it a meaning that is a neutral, it's just like this is what it is, right? And it's all about the meaning that I have chosen to give it, then I can look at things very openly, right? I don't look at the Federal Reserve as something that should be or shouldn't be. It's just an is. And so when I look at it as an is, then I say, okay, what is it doing, right? Because I have to make decisions for myself based on what it is doing. I don't have to make decisions for myself on what silver is doing, right? Because regardless if silver goes up or down, it doesn't make any difference in my life, because I haven't given it that kind of meaning, right? Somebody else says, no, I dumped all my money, 100% of everything I have, I'm all in on silver. Now, whatever happens to silver has a whole lot of meaning to their life, right? That's the difference. Same thing with politics, same thing with, you know, whatever it is, maybe the debts that they have. All this is about the meaning that you have given it. And so if it's in a bad, or if it's in a good or bad situation because of the meaning that you have given it, now you have this expectations or an external based on it all. Now, when I look at it and I think about it, it's just like, okay, the Federal Reserve, whether they screw up or don't screw up, doesn't make any difference to me, right? Because I'm making decisions based on my own ideas of what it is that I feel that I need to do in accordance to understanding the economy. I can't blame them because they're an external, right? Yes, that happens. That's the neutral. It's about the meaning that I give it, right? That's going to happen no matter what. I can't make any difference on side of that. The only difference I can do is to understand what it is that I need to do based on the information that I have received. So when I listen to like the Federal Reserve, I was listening to like Ben Bernanke's book yesterday. I was mowing the lawn and I had downloaded he had written a book, I guess, like in 2022. So it was fairly recent. And I'm listening to the book and he's talking about monetary policy. And it is exactly It is exactly all the things that I have been concerned about, that I have been bringing up on this channel, trying to share with the viewers out there so that they can understand what it is that the Federal Reserve is seeing and doing to conduct themselves in accordance to the current monetary policy, based on all the craziness that had actually taken place prior to the lower bound of zero. Like, all the stuff that the Federal Reserve had done to conduct themselves come to an end when they hit the lower bound of zero. They lost their monetary policy, and Ben Bernanke is actually describing it in his book really well, right? On what it is that they needed to do in order to figure out how monetary policy was going to work, considering that they no longer had any scope. This is what they use, the term scope, right? When it comes to adjustment of monetary policy or adjustment of interest rates to stimulate the economy. It failed them. It was over. They were done, right? And he said, that's okay. And he goes in to talk deeply about forward guidance, right? Even talked about the speech, right? That speech that I bring up all the time, that speech that he was given back in November of 2002, deflation and how to prevent it from ever occurring. He brings that speech up in that book, and I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, no way, right? This is everything like I have been saying. Like, I know I got monetary policy dialed in from a working class point of view better than anybody. In fact, I got monetary policy dialed in better than most people out there, especially when it comes to the mainstream media. I mean, those people have no clue about monetary policy. Anytime you have ever seen any statement or any economist talk about the 2% target, turn it off right now. They are done. Do not know what monetary policy is. Get them out of your sight, right? Because they're going to fill your head with absolute garbage that doesn't make any sense. The monetary policy does not go for a 2% target. It goes for a 2% average inflation rate over time, which means that monetary policy would have inflation moderately above 2% for some time, whatever the hell that means. But knowing that, and then looking out there and seeing that and then try to observe it, like just knowing that is the true monetary policy, that they are shooting for moderately above 2% for some time, understanding that is the monetary policy. And then I go out there and I look at the mainstream media to find any article that can support that, and there is none. There is literally none. And so I think about that. It must be part of the Fed's tool strategy to communicate this particular idea of what monetary policy is through the mainstream propaganda. Because when you look at that and then you look at the central bankers' communications to themselves, and it's just like, you guys aren't telling the same story. I don't get it. Like, I mean, why aren't you telling the same thing to the mainstream media? And then it dawned on me. It was like, because that is the monetary policy tool, that spreading of that propagandized information. And it works. It works so well. And that's what blows me away, is that they said that they were going to do this. They said, hey, we are going to do this. We are going to use our words in a way that will guide the markets, and so that we don't actually have to do anything with our interest rate adjustments. They said it. Like, they didn't say it as clearly as that, right? They got this long, convoluted way of communicating that out there. But that's ultimately what it is. And so when I look out there and I see it, and I'm like, wow, man, literally 99.9% of the people have got it wrong. They do not get the monetary policy from the Federal Reserve at all. They have totally missed it. And because of that, they feel that the Fed is screwed up, or they don't know what they're doing, or, whatever, like they can't bring it down to where they need it. And I'm thinking, no, they got it right where they wanted it, moderately above 2% for some time. Like, how are they screwing that up? That's what they said that they were going to do. And everybody goes and like, no, they're going for a target of 2%, and they can't get there. And I'm like, no, they're not. That's not the case. All right, moving on. All right, I can build my shack in the woods now. All right, if all the people that are poor would just know their place. The crazy thing to me is that none of this money is worth anything if the rest of the world decides to no longer use it. David, that's not true. They can go ahead and no longer want to use it, but that doesn't do anything but cause them to go into a depression. Like, they can't not choose it. What they can do is say that I'm not going to use it anymore, and that means I don't eat. It means I don't get to sell my products. It means I don't get to play in the economy anymore. That's what it means, right? People can say, I don't want to use the dollar anymore, and guess what? You don't get to participate in the economy because you're not using dollars. Think about it. If I chose right now, it says I'm not going to accept dollars anymore, that means I don't get to go to work. It means I don't get to go to the store and spend food, buy food, right? I go in there, I got a silver coin right here in my pocket, look. Right? You think anybody at any of these stores is going to trade me anything for this, right? No, not a single one. I might find some clerk down there who will be like, oh yeah, man, here, I'll give you $20. Now I'm back in money again. I don't want to use money. I want to trade this right over for food. I want to trade it directly over for goods and services. I want to trade it directly over for that. I might find a couple of people because I actually know some people. But if you didn't know anybody, how the hell are you going to eat? See, I know if you drop me into any town in this country and I had these in my pocket, I would run right down to the local bar and I would go and get fiat. Why? Because everybody uses fiat and I don't want to be depressed and hungry. So I would have to sell this for the fiat so I can go and get a place to stay and eat. And that's the same thing for no matter where you are in this entire globe. Even if you decide, I don't want to, you don't have any other choice. Good luck. Go sleep out on the ground. Right? Because that's the case. There's nothing else to use. We could, here, go use it, man. Like, I can't find anybody who's going to directly give me anything for this if I go to a store. Right? I would have to beg somebody to be like, okay, I will go and use my fiat to go buy food, trade it to you for this. Still, at the end of the day, what do they need? Fiat. I needed them to have their fiat in order for me to get the food so I could trade the food for this. No matter what, I was still stuck using the dollars, even if it wasn't me directly doing it. There's no way. There's just simply no way that the dollar is going to fail as a world reserve currency until there is the only way it could fail, here, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The only way that the dollar can absolutely fail as a world reserve currency is to have a worldwide depression. That's it, right? And that way, a new currency can emerge out of the ashes of that. There is nothing that can step up and replace the dollar. The dollar is functioning as a world reserve currency. People will accept it. Saudi Arabia just issued out debt that is due in dollars, literally billions and billions of dollars that they need to acquire in order to pay those debts back. US dollars they will need to acquire to pay those debts back. This is Saudi Arabia, right? Getting out of the dollar, don't want to do oil deals. Oil's, petrodollar is cooked. Those guys need to sell something in order to get the dollars. What are they going to sell? The only product they have. What are they going to have to sell it in? Right? Dollars. Doesn't mean that every transaction is going to be in dollars, but there's going to be a lot of them because that's what they have. There is nothing else to use. It's either that or do nothing. If you want to do it in gold or Bitcoin, guess what? The most industrious person out there will hoard it all for themselves and again will cause a worldwide depression. You can't stop this. You can't stop the dollar from doing what it's doing because nobody else is doing what the dollar can do. That's it. That's all there is to it. Okay? There is no other nation out there that can provide the world with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasuries, and there's no other nation out there that is even remotely wanting to come close to running the trade deficits that the United States does. See, if we run trade deficits, we import stuff and export dollars. There's no other nation that wants it. Certainly not the BRICS nations. Like, none of those nations wants to be the debtor. They all want to be exporters. They want to export stuff and import money. That raises your standard of living. If you are exporting debt and importing stuff, you are maintaining a luxurious life. Big difference. Raising your standard of living, maintaining a luxurious life. We are maintaining a luxurious life here in the United States. Now, how long can that continue? Well, as long as we have new money pouring in from the debt issuance that nobody else is doing, it can continue on until that day comes where it finally completely collapses, and I guarantee you that is going to be one scary moment for the entire globe. But when it does, a new currency can emerge. Maybe it will be silver-backed. I doubt it, right? Maybe it will be Bitcoin. I doubt that too. Probably, what will end up happening is that the Federal Reserve will end up buying the debt of foreign nations, putting it on their balance sheet, then using their liabilities as a backing for a stable coin that will then now be the digital currency that rips around the world. And the reason why I think that is because that's what they've said they would do. Like in their speeches, if you go and listen to all their communications about stable coins and digital currencies, it lands in line something very much like that. Maybe not so much with the buying a foreign debt, like that might be my part added in, but Ben Bernanke said that in his speech from way back in 2002 on how it is to provide the world with liquidity, is that they could use the purchasing of foreign debts, right? The foreign debt issuance, put that on their balance sheet and issue out liabilities for it. Like, to me, that falls right in line with the direction in which that we are going. We're not going back to gold. Who would go back to gold, man? The most industrious person would hoard it all. We have a luxurious life. We would lose all our gold within no time at all, and we would all be in the poorhouse. Sounds like a horrible way of going about it. Now, me personally, I'm sitting in a position in which that I think I would actually benefit from that kind of thing. But most of the people I know have no gold in possession, zero, right? They certainly don't have a whole lot of silver, and they don't have a whole lot of idea on how that would even operate. So now, me personally, yeah, let's go back to a gold standard. Let's screw the dollar. Let it crash, man. I'm sitting in a position in which that would just absolutely benefit me in amazing ways. But I don't look forward to that because I know what kind of impact that would have on the rest of the globe, and that doesn't sound like very much fun. Yeah. All right, what time is it? Oh, geez, I rambled off here. Sorry, guys, I should go. Okay, be careful with BTC here if you bought any of the BTC derivatives. At the BTC 535 low, BTC might signal sells here above 63. Don't allow central bank digital currencies to be used here. I don't think you're going to have any other choice. I don't think you'll have any choice. You know, I mean, you can try and stick with cash, but they're going to make cash a nuisance, and then you're going to I don't think you're going to have any other choice. All right. They don't have any fake money either. All right, I'm melting down old cell phones for the gold. Dollar is king. I agree. Sinful, you should listen instead of talking so much. You clearly have some misunderstanding to redress. Uh-oh. Is Sinful going off? All right. JP Morgan charging for checking accounts now. Yeah, and you're going to find that's going to be the case for a lot of stuff. Like, if you're not using digital components, they're gonna like make it a nuisance for you. And that's just like, I mean, it's like, it's kind of becoming obvious now, like that's what's going on. And you know, I'd imagine like at some point when you do see like the stable coins becoming more prevalent inside of the transactions that are being done out there, like ultimately, I think that the Federal Reserve would love to have stable coins being operated out there, regulated by government. That way they don't have to deal with the regulation of it. That's like the government's problem. They can handle their monetary policy all on their own and say, hey man, that thing over there, that's all you, you know, government. We deal with monetary policy, financial conditions, stuff like that. And then in that sort of sense, if you could get it into the stablecoin version of things, can you imagine how easy at that point it would be to start tokenizing everything out there? Every company can tokenize their products, their services, the labor, your individual, everything could be tokenized at that point, and then going through the stablecoins and again being all backed by the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve. That, I think, is really the direction that everything is going to end up. Like, you know, and only because there's really no way that you can stop it. Like, it's happening, right? Like, just try and stop it. You can't. Like, there's nothing you can do. It's like the cat's out of the bag. It's on its way. You can do things that says, I'm not going to participate in the system. And guess what? You're back here again trying to figure out how it is you're going to eat, right? Makes it very difficult, right? Try operating without a cell phone. Try operating without a checking account. Try operating with all those things. And you're going to find that you're probably living a fairly miserable existence unless you happen to be independently wealthy or just live on a ranch out in the middle of nowhere, commune style or something, you know, where you just don't care about those things. But most people can't operate like that. Like, there's it's not a feasible way of even operating is to think that I'm not going to use the dollar or cash or something like that. Most of us have to take into the idea it's going to be that way. Like, that's the way it's going to be. We can try and get ourselves out of the system as best we can, right? If we have these in our hand and that shuts down, you know, the banking account shuts down or whatever, at least this is something that we still have. But ultimately, in order to prosper and enjoy and have everything like in a real way, you got to figure out how that system works so you can participate in it without getting burned too bad, considering that the inequality will continue to grow no matter what you do, so long as you have new money coming into the system. You just can't stop it. All right, I gotta go, guys. Simon, your social credit score is going down. I'm not worried about it. Social credit score, what does that mean? You know? What is social credit score? Here, let me give you a spin on the dice before I leave. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys are awesome. My social credit is shit. I know my part. I have much support to make sure I do the right thing. You know? Sinful may not be critical thinking at the moment, but is here might be enlightening. All righty, well, we'll see you, man, later. All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you all. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. We got 173 likes with 380 people watching. I really appreciate everybody who's joined in on the live stream, everybody who's supported the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. We're going to get some member-only live streams going here. It's going to be a little difficult right now because the Fed's going into a blackout period, so they don't really communicate a whole lot of stuff. Like, they got all this propaganda that they're pushing out right now, but that's not good information. The good information is like the speeches and the data, you know, the stuff like those working papers and stuff that they put out. So once we get something that's really good to break down, then I will get a members only live stream set up. Those member only live streams are absolutely killer. They're really, really popular right now. I have like 899. I'm just shy of 900 members to the channel, but it's like growing just about every single day. I'm looking forward to the day that I have it up to 10,000 members. We're almost 10% of the way there, so we're growing. It's $1 a month, right? So it's almost nothing to you, but it's everything to me. I put a lot of work and time and effort and energy into those videos, and there's a bunch of them that you could go through right now that we have done, the member-only live stream videos, where we break down Fed speeches, talking about like everything from the communication styles that they use to talking about Basel III endgame, talking about the monetary policy. Like, we talk about all that stuff, right? There's really the information that they are putting out. When we internalize that stuff, we now have a better understanding of how it is that this stuff is going to impact our lives than when we watch it on the mainstream media. Like, I know it's a lot of work, it's time, it's effort to get through this stuff, but I'm here with you doing it, right? I mean, I'm breaking these things down as best I can. We're having the discussion about it. And I really just don't know of any other way that you are going to be able to internalize that information, to understand the monetary policy on the level that these guys do, these central bankers do. Like, there's really no other way of doing it. So anyway, I left a link down in the description. Be sure to join the channel, $1 a month. And here's something that I thought was really cool. I'm going to leave it at this. What ended up happening is that members of the channel are now gifting memberships to other people. So really, like, I had this viewer, Grand Roofing Incorporated, gift like 150 memberships one night as we were doing a live stream. He's just gifting all these memberships out to these people. Well, I think they were taken back by that and started gifting memberships themselves. So like, it almost started creating like this exponential kind of growth idea to it, is that all these people who were joining the channel and becoming members or were gifted memberships were actually going out and gifting memberships to other people out there, and like, you know, kind of almost like forcing this community to grow, which I thought was just amazing, right? Because at $1 a month, I mean, like $12 a year, $120 for a decade of hardcore dedicated information that I'm putting into this. And I just don't know where you're going to get it any cheaper than that, and especially get it to the level that I'm trying to present it at. I mean, sure, there's other people out there who are pretty fancy with their edits and all their, maybe, I don't know, the way they speak or something, because you know me, man, I'm the uneducated economist. But as far as the quality of the content in which that you can use it, I don't think there's anything that can match it. Like, I think this information is more useful to you personally than anything else that you can find out there. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.